The sky above the moon Vera 9 was covered in thick gray clouds. Electric storms rolled across the horizon, and the air smelled like burnt metal. The ground was cracked and blackened from the recent battle between humans and the alien race known as the Tirashi. Among the silent ruins, a lone human walked slowly through the wreckage. His name was Elias Rook, a scavenger and former soldier. His armor was scratched, his oxygen tank half empty, and his only company was the low hum of his helmet filter. Each step he took crunched over twisted steel and the remains of machines that once belonged to the Tirashi. Elias wasn't proud of what war had done. He wasn't even sure what victory meant anymore. He just searched for anything useful: metal scraps, power cells, or maybe a working transmitter. The moon was cold and lifeless, but he had learned to survive in worse places. As he walked past a broken ship engine, his scanner beeped faintly. The signal was weak, but it was there, something alive hidden under debris. He frowned. "That can't be right," he muttered. No life signs had been detected for days. Still, curiosity pulled him forward. He brushed away pieces of glass and plating until he uncovered a small emergency pod, half buried in dust. Inside the pod, something moved. Elias raised his weapon automatically, then froze when he saw what was inside. It wasn't a soldier or a trap. It was a child. A small alien girl, no older than 8 or 9 in human years, lay curled in the corner of the pod. Her skin was pale blue and faintly luminous, her eyes large and silver like polished metal. She was shaking, clutching a torn blanket made of some alien fabric. Her breathing was fast. Frightened, Elias slowly lowered his weapon. "It's okay," he said through his helmet speaker. "You're safe now." But the girl didn't understand. Her translator device was broken, and the words came out as a harsh buzzing sound to her ears. She pressed herself against the back wall of the pod, eyes wide in terror. She had been told stories, horrible ones, that humans ate alien children, that they burned planets and smiled while doing it. And now in front of her stood one of those monsters. When Elias took a step closer, she screamed, a small, sharp cry of pure fear. "Hey." "Easy," Elias said, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "I'm not gonna hurt you." But she didn't understand his words. To her, he was speaking the growling language of the monsters from the dark. She reached for a sharp piece of metal to defend herself, her tiny hands shaking. Elias sighed softly. He could leave her. The smart thing to do would be to move on, save his oxygen, and let the rescue teams deal with this. But when he looked at her trembling form, something in his chest tightened. He remembered another time, years ago, when he had been trapped after a bombing, scared and alone until someone had pulled him out and said, "You're not going to die today, kid." He couldn't just walk away, so Elias took off his helmet slowly, showing his face. His brown hair was messy, his face dirty and lined with exhaustion. But his eyes were kind. He placed the helmet on the ground, then crouched so he wasn't towering over her. "See?" he said softly. "No monster." The girl stared at him, confused. His skin wasn't gray like her people said. His teeth weren't sharp. His eyes weren't red with fire. He just looked tired, and somehow gentle. She tilted her head slightly, but still didn't move. Elias carefully reached into a small pouch and took out a ration bar. He unwrapped it slowly so she could see it wasn't a weapon, then placed it on the ground between them. He didn't push it toward her. He just left it there and backed away. "Food," he said, tapping his stomach. "Eat." The girl shook her head quickly. Her translator crackled weakly, and she whispered something in her own language. To him, it sounded like a plea. She thought he was trying to feed her before eating her. Elias realized she was terrified of him, not just as a stranger, but as a human. He sighed again, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess we're starting from zero, huh?" he said quietly. He looked around and saw that the pod's heating unit was dead. The temperature was dropping fast and night was coming. Without shelter, she wouldn't survive the cold. He pointed toward the small cave nearby where his shelter was set up. "Come," he said gently, then stepped back again. He didn't grab her or force her. He just gestured and began walking away, hoping she would follow. At first, she didn't move. But when the wind howled through the ruins and the air turned colder, she peeked out of the pod. The human had disappeared behind the rocks. Part of her wanted to stay. Her mind screamed that it was safer to hide, but her body was freezing. She took a shaky step forward. Then another. By the time she reached the cave, Elias was already lighting a small heater. The soft orange glow filled the space with warmth. He looked up when she entered and smiled. "Welcome," he said, motioning toward a seat near the heater. She hesitated but sat down carefully, keeping her distance. Elias gave her a thermal blanket from his bag and turned away so she wouldn't feel watched. He started fixing his scanner, pretending not to notice when she glanced at him. Hours passed in silence. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. She just sat there wrapped in the blanket, her big silver eyes reflecting the firelight. Elias finally leaned back against the wall. "You remind me of my niece," he murmured softly. "She's about your size. Always stubborn." She tilted her head again, catching his tone even if she didn't know the words. There was no anger in his voice, only quiet care. Outside, the storm grew worse. Thunder rolled across the barren plains and flashes of light illuminated the cave's entrance. The girl flinched with every sound, pressing the blanket closer around her. When a particularly loud boom echoed, she gasped and dropped the blanket. Instinctively, Elias moved closer, not to grab her, but to adjust the small barrier he had set up at the entrance. "Don't worry," he said. "It's just thunder," but she didn't know what thunder was. She thought the sky was angry. Tears filled her eyes, and before she realized it, she had crawled closer to the human. Elias froze. She looked terrified, but she didn't run away this time. Her tiny fingers grabbed the edge of his coat, trembling. She didn't say anything. She just stayed close, hoping the monster would protect her from the noise. Elias slowly placed his coat around her shoulders and said softly, "It's okay. You're safe here." The storm continued outside, but the cave felt warmer now. She looked up at him, her eyes still wet but calmer. For the first time she saw something she didn't expect in a human: kindness. She whispered something again in her language. The translator sparked faintly and translated only 2 words in his ear. "Not monster." Elias smiled a little. "That's right," he said quietly. "Not a monster." That night, as the storm raged, Elias stayed awake by the fire, keeping watch. The little alien girl finally fell asleep, still wrapped in his coat. He didn't know who she was or how she had survived the crash. He didn't even know if rescuers would come for her. But he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't abandon her now. Outside the cave, lightning split the sky, and the sound rolled over the empty wasteland. Inside, a tired human and a frightened alien child shared the warmth of a single fire, 2 enemies brought together by something stronger than fear. And though neither of them knew it yet, this small act of compassion would one day change not just their lives, but the history of 2 worlds. When morning came to the ruined moon of Vera 9, the storm had finally ended. The gray sky was calm again, and the weak sunlight touched the rocks and broken ships scattered across the wasteland. Elias Rook woke up first. He stretched his arms and looked at the small alien girl still sleeping beside the fire. She was curled up under his coat, breathing quietly, her small hands clutching the edge of the fabric. For a moment he forgot where he was. It almost looked peaceful. He smiled softly. She made it through the night. Quietly, he stood up and checked the oxygen level in his tank. It was low. He would need to find more within 2 days, or both of them would be in danger. But before anything else, the girl needed food and water. Elias prepared a small meal, just some warm water and a piece of ration bread. The smell of food filled the cave, and soon the girl's silver eyes blinked open. She looked around in confusion, then froze when she saw the human near the fire. Fear returned to her face like a shadow. Elias didn't move closer. He just sat across from her, holding out the bread carefully. "Here," he said softly. "Food." The girl shook her head, backing away. Her translator made a faint static sound, and she whispered something in her language that sounded frightened. He guessed what she meant. She still thought it might be a trick. Elias sighed and broke off a piece of the bread. He took a small bite himself, then chewed slowly. "See? It's okay." The girl blinked. She tilted her head, clearly confused. He didn't fall over or turn into a monster. She waited a moment, then hesitantly reached forward and took the other half from his hand. Her fingers brushed against his glove for a second, light as a feather. She sniffed the food suspiciously, then took a tiny bite. The taste was strange, but not bad. Hunger won over fear. Within minutes, the bread was gone. Elias smiled faintly. "Good girl." She didn't understand the words, but she caught the tone, gentle, not mocking. She gave a small nod and looked down shyly. After breakfast, Elias began working on the small translator device that hung around her neck. It was cracked and half melted from the crash. He had some tools and spare wires from his scavenging bag, so he tried his best to fix it. The girl watched him closely. Every time he touched the device, she flinched slightly as if expecting him to break it more. "Easy," Elias said, not looking up. "I'm helping, not hurting." Her eyes followed every move of his hands. There was something calming about the way he worked. Slow, patient, steady. It didn't match the stories she'd heard about humans being cruel or loud. After about an hour, he connected the final wire. The translator flickered to life, humming faintly. Elias grinned. "All right, let's see if this works." He handed it to her carefully. She hesitated, then took it and placed it back around her neck. The small device blinked a soft green light. She pressed a button and spoke quietly. "Ken, you hear?" Elias's eyes widened. The voice was soft and slightly robotic, but it translated her alien words into his language. "Yes," he said, smiling. "I can hear you now." The girl's mouth opened slightly in surprise. The translator worked both ways, so she heard his reply in her own tongue. You speak?" "I do," Elias said. "My name's Elias," he pointed at himself. "Elias." She hesitated, then touched her chest. Leary, he repeated gently. "That's a pretty name." Her expression softened just a little. It was the first time anyone had said her name with warmth since the crash. Elias nodded toward the cave entrance. "Leary, do you remember what happened to your ship?" She looked down sadly. "There was fire and noise. The sky broke open. I lost my mother. I ran into a pod before everything went dark." Elias's heart tightened. She was just a child, alone, scared, and stranded on a war-torn world. He spoke softly. "I'm sorry, Leary. I'll try to help you get home." Leary's eyes widened. "You help me?" "Of course." He smiled faintly. "I'm not your enemy." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said almost in a whisper, "My teacher said humans eat children. Is that not true?" Elias blinked in surprise, then burst out laughing. Not in a cruel way, but in disbelief. "Eat children? No. We don't do that." Leary's cheeks flushed a faint silver. "But they said humans destroy everything." Elias's voice turned sad. "Sometimes. We do destroy, but not everything. Some of us try to fix what's broken." For a moment, the cave was quiet except for the crackle of the heater. Leary looked down, her small hands fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. She was thinking Elias didn't rush her. He just started checking his scanner again. The device showed faint energy readings about 10 kilometers east, probably from another wrecked ship. That might mean supplies or maybe a working beacon. He decided to go there soon. But if he left the girl alone, she might panic or worse, wander off. "Leary," he said, "I need to find more oxygen. You'll come with me, okay?" She blinked. "Outside? It is dangerous." He nodded. "Yes, but I'll protect you." She didn't answer right away, but she finally nodded slowly. Before they left, Elias wrapped her in a thicker coat and adjusted the small oxygen mask to fit her face. It looked a bit oversized, but it worked. They walked across the dead landscape together. The ground was covered in ash and broken metal, and strange twisted plants poked out of the dirt like skeletal hands. Leary stayed close to Elias, holding onto the back of his armor as they walked. Every time the wind howled, she flinched, but he would glance back and nod reassuringly. After an hour, they reached the remains of another crashed Tirashi ship. It was half buried in a crater. Smoke still rose faintly from one side. Elias scanned for power cells and found a few weak signals. "Wait here," he told Leary. "I'll check inside." Leary grabbed his sleeve. "Don't go." He looked at her gently. "I'll be fine. Stay hidden, all right? If you hear anything, call me." She nodded reluctantly and hid behind a large rock. Inside the ship, the air was heavy with the smell of burned metal. Elias searched the compartments carefully, finding 2 working oxygen tanks and a half-damaged medical kit. Jackpot, he thought. Then he heard a faint sound behind him, a low growl. He turned quickly, weapon ready, but it wasn't an animal. It was a damaged security drone, its sensors glowing red. It had mistaken him for an intruder. The drone fired a weak plasma bolt that grazed his shoulder. Elias ducked behind a panel and returned fire, hitting its power core. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks. Outside, Leary heard the noise and screamed, "Elias!" He ran out of the wreckage, smoke trailing behind him. "It's okay. I'm okay." Leary ran to him, eyes wide with worry. "You are hurt," she said, pointing to his shoulder. "It's nothing," he said, brushing it off. "Just a scratch." She frowned and opened the medical kit he carried. Her small hands trembled, but she pulled out a healing patch and pressed it gently to his wound. "Better now," she said softly. Elias looked down at her and smiled. "Thank you, Doctor." Leary gave a tiny laugh, the first sound of joy since he'd met her. They returned to the cave as the sun set again. The world outside turned orange and gold, and the two of them walked side by side in silence. That night, as they sat by the fire, Elias told her stories about Earth, about oceans that stretched forever, forests full of green life, and children who played under blue skies. Leary listened, wide-eyed. "Your world sounds beautiful." "It used to be," Elias said. "We had wars too, but we learned. Sometimes kindness starts small, like this." Leary tilted her head. "Like when you gave me food?" "Exactly," he said. For a long time they sat quietly, watching the fire dance between them. The fear in her eyes had faded a little, replaced by something new. Trust. Before she fell asleep, Leary whispered softly, "Maybe. Humans are not monsters." Elias smiled, poking the fire gently. "Maybe aliens aren't either." Outside, the cold wind blew across the wasteland, carrying the ashes of old battles. Inside the cave, a tired man and a small alien girl sat together in warmth and peace. Two enemies learning to understand each other under the flickering light of a dying world. Days passed on the cold moon of Vera 9. The storms came and went, but inside the small cave, a strange peace had begun to grow between a human and an alien child. Elias Rook and Leary were no longer complete strangers. The fear that had once filled her eyes was fading, replaced by something else, curiosity. She still flinched at loud noises, still slept close to the fire, but she no longer looked at Elias like he was a monster. Every morning, Elias worked outside, repairing small machines and searching for more supplies. Leary always followed, staying a few steps behind, watching everything he did. "What are you doing?" she asked one morning, her translator buzzing slightly as it spoke. Elias smiled. "Fixing the water purifier. We need clean water if we want to live long." "Water. Clean?" she repeated. He nodded. "Yes, if water is dirty, you get sick. So we make it clean with this." He showed her a small filter system. Leary tilted her head, fascinated. Her kind didn't use mechanical purifiers. They had natural crystals that cleaned water. But she liked how Elias explained things. He never shouted, never treated her like a child who knew nothing. She pointed at the wires. "Can I help?" Elias looked surprised, then smiled. "Sure, hold this wire steady." Her small hands trembled as she did what he said. Together they connected the parts, and the purifier hummed to life. Leary's face lit up with wonder. "It works." Elias grinned. "That's teamwork." She repeated the word slowly, as if testing it. "Teamwork," he nodded. "It means we help each other." She smiled. A small and genuine smile that warmed the cold cave more than the fire ever could. Later that day, while Elias was checking his scanner, Leary sat beside him, watching the small blinking dots on the screen. "What is that?" she asked. "It shows where the energy sources are," Elias explained. "Those dots are signals. One of them might be a ship or maybe a beacon that can send for help." "Help?" "Yes, maybe someone will come for us." Leary looked down. "My people, they think humans are bad. If they find us, they might hurt you." Elias was quiet for a moment. Then he said softly, "Maybe, but I'm not leaving you, Leary, not until I know you're safe." Her silver eyes widened. "But why?" "You don't know me." Elias looked out at the horizon, his voice calm. "Because it's the right thing to do." She didn't fully understand what that meant, but she felt something strange in her chest, a warmth she had never felt before. In the evenings, they sat by the fire. Elias often told her stories about Earth. He told her about rivers that glowed orange in the sunset, trees taller than buildings, and birds that sang in the morning light. Leary listened with wide eyes, picturing the things she had never seen. "My world had forests too," she said one night. "The trees were blue and they sang when the wind touched them. My mother said they were alive." Elias smiled softly. "Sounds beautiful." "It was," she said sadly. "But the war, it burned everything." Elias didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire. War always burns everything, he said finally. Leary looked at him curiously. You don't like war? He shook his head. I used to think fighting made you strong. But now I think being kind takes more courage. She thought about his words for a long time. The next day, Leary grew sick. She woke up coughing, her skin pale and her breath weak. Elias immediately went to her side. Hey, easy, he said gently, feeling her forehead. It was hot, her translator crackled. I feel cold. Inside, she whispered weakly. Elias's heart tightened. He recognized the signs, oxygen sickness. Her small lungs weren't used to the thin air of this moon. He quickly opened the damaged medical kit they had found. The human medicine inside might not work on her species, but he had no choice. He mixed a small dose of oxygen serum with water and held it out. Drink this slowly. Leary looked scared. What is it? It will help you breathe, he said softly. Trust me. She hesitated but finally took the cup and sipped. The taste made her shiver, but she obeyed. For hours, Elias sat beside her, checking her breathing, cooling her forehead, whispering softly to keep her calm. He barely slept that night. By morning, her color had returned slightly and she opened her eyes. You stayed here? She asked weakly. Of course I did, Elias said with a tired smile. Couldn't let you handle the cold alone. Leary blinked. You care for me? Yeah, he said quietly. Guess I do. She smiled faintly and fell asleep again. 2 days later, Leary was strong enough to walk. Elias taught her how to light the small heater and how to use the radio device. This button, he said, pointing, sends a signal. If anyone's listening, they might find us. Leary pressed the button carefully, her small fingers shaking. You really think they will come? Elias smiled. Maybe not soon. But someone always listens, Leary. That's what hope means. Hope. She whispered the word softly, as if trying to feel it. That evening, while Elias repaired his armor, Leary sat by the fire and drew shapes in the dust with a stick. When he asked what she was drawing, she said, Your planet. You said it has blue water and green land, right? He nodded, impressed. You remembered. Yes, she said proudly. Then she added a smaller circle next to it. And this is my planet. Maybe one day, they can be friends. Elias looked at the 2 circles drawn side by side and smiled. I'd like that. But peace never lasted long on Vera 9. The next morning, Elias's scanner picked up a new signal, a moving one. Not from a wreck or a beacon. It was a patrol ship. His heart sank. They're close, he whispered. Leary looked at the scanner. My people? He nodded slowly. Looks like it, her face filled with both relief and fear. Then they can take me home, she said hopefully. Yes, Elias said. But if they see me with you, they might think I kidnapped you. They could kill me before I explain. Leary stared at him in shock. No, you saved me. I know, Elias said gently. But they don't know that. She grabbed his arm. Then hide, please. He smiled sadly. I can't hide forever, Leary. If they land, they'll scan this cave. They'll find me anyway. Tears filled her eyes. But they'll hurt you. Elias crouched in front of her, his voice soft. Listen to me. If they come, I want you to tell them the truth. Tell them I didn't harm you. Tell them humans can be good. Her lower lip trembled. They won't believe me. Then make them believe. He touched her shoulder gently. You're stronger than you think. Leary wiped her eyes and nodded slowly. Outside, the scanner beeped louder. The ship was coming closer. Elias looked out of the cave, his mind racing. He had saved her, taught her, cared for her, but now it might all end. He took a deep breath. All right, little one, he said. Let's be ready. That night, they sat together quietly, knowing that the next day would change everything. Elias gave Leary a small metal badge from his old uniform. This was mine when I was a soldier, he said. It means protection. Keep it, Leary held it close. You'll need it too, he smiled sadly. I have you. That's enough. She didn't understand why those words made her chest ache, but she felt something deep inside, something she couldn't name. When she finally fell asleep, Elias stayed awake, watching the faint light of the stars through the cave's opening. He thought about the wars, the lies, and the strange little girl who now trusted him more than her own people. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long while, he felt proud, not as a soldier, but as a human outside in the distance. A faint blue light blinked across the horizon, the glow of an approaching alien patrol. Elias whispered softly, "Whatever happens, Leary, you're not alone anymore." And with that promise, the long night began to fade into dawn. The morning came quietly, but the peace didn't last. Elias woke to the faint hum of engines echoing in the distance. It wasn't the sound of wind or thunder, it was the sound of ships. He sat up quickly, checking his scanner. The blinking blue dots on the screen were no longer far away. They were moving fast, directly toward their location. He looked over at Leary. She was still asleep, curled under his coat near the fire, her silver hair shining faintly in the morning light. For a moment he just watched her. He wished he could give her a normal life, one without fear or war. But reality didn't care about wishes. He gently shook her shoulder. "Leary, wake up," she blinked sleepily. "What's wrong?" "They're coming," he said quietly. "Your people, a Tarashi patrol." Her eyes widened in surprise, then hope. "My people? They found us?" Elias nodded. "Yes, they'll be here soon." Leary sat up quickly, excitement and fear mixing in her face. "Then we can go home." Elias didn't answer right away. He turned off the fire and started packing supplies into his small bag. "Listen, Leary," he said carefully. "When they arrive, they might not understand. They think humans and Tarishi are enemies. They might believe I hurt you." Leary's smile faded. "But you didn't." "I know," he said gently. "But they don't know that. You have to tell them the truth." Her eyes filled with worry. "If I tell them, will they hurt you?" He hesitated. "I don't know." Leary shook her head firmly. "I will not let them." Elias smiled sadly. "You're brave. But if anything happens, just remember what I taught you. Be kind even when others aren't." She looked down, gripping the metal badge he had given her. "Kindness is harder than fighting," she whispered. He nodded. "Yes, it is. But it's stronger too." The engines grew louder. Dust and wind whipped around the cave entrance as the Tarashi patrol ship descended onto the barren surface. Its glowing blue lights cut through the fog like blades. Elias took a deep breath and stood up. "Stay behind me," he said. The ship's hatch opened with a hiss. 5 alien soldiers stepped out, their armor sleek and silver, their weapons raised. Their leader, a tall Tarashi with glowing patterns on her arms, walked forward and shouted something in their language. Leary's translator clicked on automatically. "Identify yourself, human. You are trespassing on a restricted site." Elias slowly raised his hands. "I'm not here to fight," he said calmly. "There's a child with me. She's one of yours." The soldiers tensed and the leader's eyes narrowed. "A child?" Leary stepped out from behind Elias, clutching his coat. "Commander Sarah," she cried. "It's me, Leary." The soldiers froze. The commander's expression changed instantly. "Leary, by the stars." She ran forward, kneeling in front of the girl. "We thought you were lost in the crash. How did you survive?" Leary pointed toward Elias. "He saved me." The commander turned sharply toward him, her glowing eyes full of suspicion. "A human saved you?" "Yes," Leary said quickly. "He found me in the wreckage. He gave me food and warmth. He fixed my translator." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Humans and Tarashi had never been known to help each other, especially not after so much war. Elias lowered his hands slowly. "She was alone. I couldn't leave her." Commander Sarah's voice was cold. "And why should we believe you, human? Your kind kills for gain." Elias didn't argue. He just said quietly, "Believe what you want. I only did what any decent person would." Leary moved between them. "He's not bad." "He's kind," she said, her voice trembling. "He took care of me when no one else did." Sarah looked torn. Her duty told her not to trust humans, but the truth was shining in Leary's eyes. Still, she gave an order to her soldiers. "Take the human into custody. We'll verify his story." Leary's eyes widened in panic. "No, don't take him." She grabbed Elias's arm tightly. Elias crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "Go with them. You'll be safe now. I don't want to leave you." He smiled. "You have to. You belong with your people." Tears filled her silver eyes. "But you're my people too now." Elias's voice caught for a moment, but he forced a small smile. "Maybe someday humans and Tarashi can be one people, but not today." He gently placed her hand over the badge on her chest. "Keep that. It'll remind you that kindness is stronger than fear." The soldiers approached, their weapons still ready. Elias didn't resist as they bound his wrists. Leary ran to Commander Sarah, pleading, "Please, he's good." "Don't hurt him." Sarah hesitated, studying Elias's calm expression. Finally, she gave a quiet command. "He will not be harmed, but he must answer questions." Elias nodded gratefully. "That's fair." They took him aboard the ship. Inside, the air was cleaner, the light brighter, but tension filled every corner. Elias sat quietly in a containment room while the soldiers scanned him for weapons and toxins. He didn't resist. He had nothing to hide. Through the small window, he saw Leary standing with Commander Sarah, speaking quickly and pointing toward the cave where they had stayed. She was telling the story, every moment, every word. After a while, Sarah entered the room. "The child says you risked your life for her," she said slowly. "That you shared your food and protected her from the cold." "That's true," Elias replied. "She's just a kid. I couldn't let her die out there." Sarah studied him. "You could have used her as a hostage, or left her. Why didn't you?" Elias met her gaze. "Because being human isn't about what species we are. It's about what choices we make." For a long time, Sarah said nothing. Then she turned away. "Our people have been at war for so long. We forgot what kindness looked like." She left the room without another word. Hours later, Leary was finally allowed to visit him. She ran to the door of the containment cell. "Elias!" He smiled faintly. "Hey, kiddo. You doing okay?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "They said you might go home soon." "Home, huh?" he said softly. "Not sure where that is anymore. You could come to my world," she said suddenly. "I'll tell them you're good." Elias chuckled gently. "I think your people need time to believe that." Leary pressed her small hand against the glass. "I'll make them believe. I promise." Elias placed his hand on the other side of the glass, matching hers. "That's my brave girl." They stood like that for a long moment. Two friends from different worlds, separated by glass but connected by something far stronger. Later that night, the Tarashi ship prepared to leave the moon. Elias stood by the window watching as they lifted off. The dark surface of Vera 9 grew smaller beneath them, and stars filled the sky. Leary came to stand beside him. "I used to think humans were scary," she said softly. "But you're not," Elias smiled. "We can be scary sometimes, but we can be kind too." She looked at him with bright eyes. "When I grow up, I want to be kind like you." He laughed gently. "That's the best thing anyone could want to be." When they finally reached orbit, Commander Sarah entered the room. "The High Council will decide your fate," she said. "But I have sent a report of your actions. They will know you saved one of ours." Elias nodded. "Thank you." Leary turned to Sarah. "Please tell them he's my friend." Sarah looked at the little girl, then at Elias. Her expression softened. "I already did." That night, as the stars drifted by outside the window, Leary couldn't sleep. She sat beside Elias's cell, whispering softly through the intercom. "Thank you, Elias." He smiled from the other side. "For what?" "For showing me what it means to be good," she said. He leaned back against the wall. "Maybe one day, Leary, your people and mine won't need rescuing from each other. Maybe we'll just meet as friends." "I hope so," she said quietly. Elias smiled. "Hope's where everything begins." The ship moved silently through space, carrying them both toward an uncertain future, but one filled with something new and powerful. Not fear, not hate, but understanding. And for the first time in the long history between humans and Tarashi, that small spark of trust would begin to change everything. The Tarashi ship glided silently through the cold dark of space. Inside, everything was calm, but Elias knew that calm could vanish any moment. He was still a human on an alien ship, surrounded by soldiers who didn't trust him. He sat quietly in his small room, looking out the window at the stars. He could see the blue shimmer of the Tarashi homeworld in the distance. It was beautiful, like a pearl floating in the night. He smiled faintly, thinking of how strange life could be. A few weeks ago, he was scavenging in the ruins. Now he was about to land on a world humans had only seen in reports. Behind him, the door opened with a soft hiss. It was Leary. She rushed in with her usual energy and sat beside him. "We're almost home," she said with a bright smile. Elias nodded. "I can see that. It looks peaceful from up here." "It is," she said softly. "My world is full of light and music. I wish you could walk under our sky, he smiled. Maybe one day. Leary's face fell a little. The council still doesn't like humans. They think you're dangerous. Elias shrugged. Maybe they're right sometimes, but maybe we can change that. Leary looked at him, her eyes full of hope. I'll help you, he chuckled. You already did. When they finally landed, Elias was escorted out by 2 guards. The city that stretched before him took his breath away. Towers of crystal rose into the clouds, glowing with soft blue light. The streets shimmered with silver patterns, and the air smelled faintly of rain and flowers. But he could feel the eyes on him. Curious, suspicious, afraid. Tirashi citizens stopped and stared as the soldiers led the lone human through their shining capital. Leary walked beside him proudly, holding her badge close to her chest. Don't worry, she whispered. They'll see what I see. Elias smiled gently. I hope so, kid. They arrived at a grand hall with walls that seemed to hum with energy. Inside sat the High Council, 5 elder Tirashi, their robes flowing like starlight. Commander Sarah stood beside them. When Elias entered, the hall grew silent. One of the elders spoke, his voice deep and calm. Human Elias Rook, you have entered Tirashi territory without permission. Yet you also saved one of our young. Why? Elias took a breath. Because she needed help, he said simply. Because it was the right thing to do. The elder tilted his head. Even though she was not your kind? Elias nodded. She was scared, cold, and alone. I've been those things too. I couldn't walk away. A ripple of whispers moved through the hall. Tirashi were logical beings. They understood strategy and order. But kindness without reason? That was something rare. Another elder leaned forward. Who risked your life? You could have died. Why sacrifice yourself for someone you did not know? Elias looked toward Leary. Because sometimes doing the right thing costs something. But that doesn't make it wrong. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Leary stepped forward, her small voice echoing through the hall. He didn't just save me, she said. He taught me. He taught me what kindness is. He gave me food, warmth, and stories. He made me believe humans can be good. The elders exchanged glances. Commander Sarah bowed her head slightly. The child speaks truth, she said quietly. I have seen her memories. He acted with honor. Finally, the eldest of them all stood. His eyes glowed softly. Perhaps it is time to see humans not as monsters, but as mirrors. They reflect the best and worst of themselves. He turned to Elias. You may go free, human. Your act will be remembered. Elias bowed slightly. Thank you. But as he turned to leave, Leary ran forward and grabbed his hand. You're leaving? He smiled gently. I think it's time. I've got a long way to go. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to go. He knelt down, placing a hand on her shoulder. Hey, this isn't goodbye. You've got a whole world that needs you now. Tell them our story. Show them what kindness can do, she sniffled. Will I see you again? He hesitated, then smiled softly. If the stars are kind, yes. Leary reached into her small pouch and pulled out a glowing crystal. This is from my people. It's called a memory stone. It will remember light from this world. Take it so you don't forget me. Elias took the crystal carefully. I could never forget you, Leary. A few days later, a human ship arrived to escort Elias back. As he walked up the ramp, he looked back one last time. Leary stood on the landing platform with Commander Sarah. The wind blew her silver hair across her face as she waved both hands high in the air. Elias smiled and waved back. Then the hatch closed and the ship lifted off. He sat by the window watching the Tirashi planet grow smaller. The memory stone in his hand glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Months passed. The story of Elias and Leary spread slowly between the stars. At first, few believed it. A human helping a Tirashi child? It sounded impossible. But evidence couldn't be denied. Commander Sarah herself confirmed it to both governments. Then something remarkable began to happen. A delegation of Tirashi scientists visited Earth for the first time in a century. Humans greeted them not with fear but with curiosity. Talks began. Small trade routes opened. And for the first time in generations, both sides spoke the word peace with hope instead of sarcasm. At the center of these new talks, the memory stone was placed in a transparent case. Its soft blue glow filled the chamber, reminding everyone of what had started it all. Not war, not politics, but compassion. Years later, Elias sat in a quiet garden on Earth. His hair was grayer now, and a small scar still crossed his cheek. He looked up at the night sky. Among the stars, one shone brighter than the rest, the Tirashi homeworld. He smiled faintly. "Hope you're doing well, kid," he murmured. A voice behind him said, "Talking to the stars again, Captain?" He turned. It was a young officer grinning. "Always," Elias replied. "They're better listeners than politicians." The officer laughed and handed him a tablet. "Message from the Alliance Embassy, sir." "You might want to see this." Elias tapped it open and froze. It was a broadcast message showing a small Tirashi girl, now grown into a young ambassador, standing before a huge crowd. Her voice came through clearly. "When I was small, I was taught that humans were monsters. But one human showed me they were not. He showed me that kindness is not weakness, it's the greatest strength of all." The crowd behind her, both humans and Tirashi, stood together, cheering as the flags of two species rose side by side. Elias felt a lump in his throat. He smiled quietly, wiping at his eyes. "You did it, Leary," he whispered. A few days later, Elias was invited to attend the opening of the Human Tirashi Alliance Center. He walked through its shining halls, filled with both species working side by side. In the center stood a monument, a small figure of a human kneeling beside an alien child, both holding a glowing crystal between them. A plaque beneath it read, "In memory of the first act of peace, between Elias Rook of Earth and Leary of Tirash." As Elias stood there, a soft light filled the room. The memory stone pulsed again, brighter this time, as if recognizing its owner. And then, through the crowd, a familiar figure appeared, taller now, her silver hair tied back, her eyes glowing warmly. "Leary," he breathed. She smiled and ran forward, hugging him tightly. "I told you we'd meet again." Elias laughed softly, his eyes shining. "You kept your promise." She stepped back, looking up at him with pride. "No, Elias, we kept it together." As they stood before the monument, people of both worlds gathered around, scientists, soldiers, children, all watching the symbol of hope that had begun with a single act of kindness. Elias looked at Leary. "You changed the galaxy," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, you did. I only followed your example," he smiled. "Then we changed it together." Outside the great glass dome, the stars burned brighter than ever, their light falling on two friends from different worlds who had once shared a fire in the ruins. And in that moment, the universe finally understood. Humanity wasn't about power or conquest or fear. It was about compassion, and that, more than anything, was what made them truly human.